Even cows are scared of the camera?
This is Will Buchanan reporting for the Walk for Liberty.
Today is July 27th, 2008, day 93.
Today I intend to walk 15 miles for liberty.
There is absolutely nothing around here. Just me and the countryside.
Last night we stayed in the tiny little town of Martinsdale, Montana,
which just so happened to coincide with the annual street dance there, at which a band was playing music for a large drunken crowd out in the street until about 2 in the morning.
So needless to say, we could hear them playing loud and clear until they stopped.
Before I go any further though, I'd like to state that I have no idea what the laws in Martinsdale are like. So I'm just using this as an illustration of how things work with many municipal governments. So anyway, let's consider an example of some town government which does have a noise ordinance.
Now, just because there's a noise ordinance there, doesn't mean there will be no unacceptable noise to any of the people who are living there.
First of all, it's the government which is deciding what constitutes unacceptable noise or unacceptable noise levels. And second, all the ordinance does is demand that the person in question pay a fine to the government. But the person still created what the government considered an unacceptable level or type of noise. Now, in our example town, just because there's a noise ordinance doesn't mean that the government never allows noise above the level which it normally considers unacceptable. There are always exceptions.
And those exceptions are called permits.
Governments are always making laws about things they say you're not allowed to do. Whether it's fishing, building a house, creating some level of noise, or even driving a car.
They claim you're not allowed to do those things unless you buy a permit from them.
So in the case of our example town, it's likely that if you're willing to pay the local government enough money, that you can buy a noise or concert permit from them, and they'll look the other way when you hold your street dance, even though you're creating more noise than what they would normally consider acceptable.
I find a couple things to be noteworthy about this arrangement.
One, it's pretty much the same as the case when you get fined for doing an activity which they say you're not supposed to do.
The only difference is whether you got permission from them first.
In the case in which you don't get permission from them, they say you're not supposed to do it and then they slap you with a fine. However, if you get permission from them first, the exact same activity is somehow magically okay.
They still make you pay to do it though, except instead of calling it a fine, they then call it a permit.
The second thing that I find noteworthy is that this whole fine/permit scheme in no way benefits the people that they claim it's supposed to protect. Let's take the case of the town with the noise ordinance again. The government would presumably claim that the noise ordinance is supposed to protect town residents from being subjected to noise that they might not want to hear. However, if the government sells someone a permit so that they'll look the other way when they create a large amount of noise, not only are the town residents then exposed to the noise, which the government claims it's protecting them from,
but also the town residents aren't compensated by the government in any way. It's the government that gets to keep the money from the permits.
So you see, government laws and ordinances such as those have nothing at all to do with protection.
They're all about control and revenue collection.
So then, what kind of system would be better than the government control scheme?
Private property and agreements between private property owners.
So back to the noise example, instead of having a supposedly one-size-fits-all government model of saying you can't create noise above a certain level,
Well, except of course, if the government sees an opportunity to collect some extra money.
A better model is for those specific private property owners to whom noise is a big deal, to make agreements among themselves over how much noise is not acceptable and to codify those agreements in their deeds. That way, if someone else subsequently buys one of the properties, not only are the existing property owners still protected, but also the person buying the property knows what they're getting into. Unlike the current government system, where the government can arbitrarily make new laws without anyone else having had agreed to them. With the government system, it's the government that has the control. With private property, each person has control over their own property.
Wouldn't you rather have control over your own property?
Finally for today, a bit of news. Documentarians Christina Heller and her partner Craig are arriving tomorrow for a few days to profile me and the Walk for Liberty as part of a full-length documentary they're making on people moving to New Hampshire as part of the Free State Project.
So stay tuned, as I'm sure the next few days should be interesting.
I walked about 13.25 miles, but still missed my goal. Maybe I should quit setting goals because of all the things that keep coming up. Here are my GPS coordinates. This is Will Buchanan for blog.walkforliberty.com, signing off.